Here we go. Are you ready, Nate?
I'm ready.
Let's do it. We're going to start off by giving our TCP socket a name. Yeah, it's going to be, I can already tell, Nate's going to name his Nate. Nate Lights. Nate Dog Lights, something like that. I'm just confident that that's what he's going to do. For the rest of us who are not monsters, we are going to give it a good name, a descriptive name. Use this name for now. This is what I'm going to call it. I'm going to call it little dev for dev because it's a device that I want to talk to. And guess what? It is the lights, dev lights. This is my naming system. And we are going to instantiate that TCP socket. So we're going to type capital T, little c. See here, autocomplete is trying to pull up the socket library. I'm going to hit tab and I'm going to hit dot and I'm going to select new as the function. This one line of code creates the socket in my script. That's wonderful. So what's the next thing we need to do? We need to connect to our lights. We're going to use one of those methods. We're going to use the name devlights : connect. And be careful here because autocomplete doesn't autocomplete it for you. What we're going to do is we're going to put in those two arguments. You may remember that it's going to be a string. So our IP address is 127.0.0.1. And the port, in our case, is 5103. And once I do that and I hit save and I hit go, guess what? You've created a socket and you're connected. How do we know? We actually don't know. Because you may be like, well, in the block controller, I had this really great little block that would turn green and red and blue, and it would tell me different things. And why don't we have one of those? We don't have one of those because we haven't programmed one of those yet. And we're not going to program one of those in this particular course. We actually have a control quick start that will show you exactly how to do that. So we're going to leave that for one of those other videos at this time. But for us, let's see that it does indeed work. We're going to come back up into our event handler. And we are going to use devlights again. And we're going to use a different method. We're going to use the write method. And what is it that we want to write? We want to write that string that we have been building. So there it is, my line 34, devlights : write. And since autocomplete isn't going to probably help you here, I will remind you that as with most things in the formal syntax, it likes to use capital letters as the first letter of the, right? So it's .capital B Boolean, it's capital V dot value. Also here it is : capital W write. Just like below it was capital C connect. You will get comfortable with the rhymes and rhythms of writing the syntax. So there we are. Devlights : write. And we're going to send temp level string. And when I hit save and I press a preset button, look at the lights in my little conference room. These things are dimming perfectly. It's wonderful.
And that was only 3 lines of code. So what was the 150 lines of code the block controller was doing if you could do it with just 3 lines of code?
Well, so a number of things, right? The status block that we were just talking about, that was part of what got written. But there's a lot of guardrails, a lot of extra support that the block controller added, and it's great. And so there's a lot of people who like to actually just go into block controller, say, give me a TCP connection, and then go behind the scenes and copy and paste it out to be a base TCP socket file, which is fine.
There's also a base TCP socket file in the help file.
There
right?
sure
You can
is.
just load up the help file. You can grab all that, just copy and paste that into your script. That'll give you a good kind of boilerplate version of a TCP socket.
Sure is. But What we're doing is we're doing it slowly, and we're going to work through all of the issues.
Because we'd rather you understand. You give a fish to a man, the fish mans for a day. But give a day to a lifetime, and that fish is always a man. I think I got that right.
Now, from here, though, we still have that fader. We need to write the event handler for the fader. But before we write the event handler for the fader, let's look at our event handler for the preset buttons. It's a little messy. And you may recall that one of the stylistic goals that I want to have for my code is I really kind of want to, as much as possible and as much as reasonable, I want to transform my event handlers to just being appropriate function calls and let all of the magic happen in the functions themselves. And where we are is we have something that's totally functional, but it's also not in a place for the fader to make use of yet. What the fader really needs is a function that will send that string, that'll take in a value and send the string. That's also exactly what we've done here inside of our event handler. So let's write one more function. We'll come up here and we will call it function func send level command. We also will make it pull in a number. And because we opened it, we will close it. I'm going to copy this stuff out because we're going to move it up. I'm going to copy it. I'll leave it here for the moment so you can see how we developed things. And then we'll put it up here and update. So we have that temp level string is going to be calling func make level command. And we are going to let that be arg number. And then we're going to print the func send command, what it's sending, and then we will use that write method. Dev lights write. What is it going to write? It's going to write our temp level string. So there is that. And then what do we do down here? Down here in our event handler, we're going to use func send level command. And what we're going to pass in is, one more time, r levels bracket I. Remember, if you thought that was a little fast, hit pause. I'll wait for you. I'll see you in just a second. So if you are keeping track, here's what's happening. Every time we poke a button, we interlock. And then we are going to call func send level command. Func send level command is immediately going to ask func make level command to take that value we pass in and transform it from being a number to being the string that we need. And then we're going to do our debug print. And we are then going to send it out to the lights. So let's see it work. One more time. Poke your buttons. And code sure still seems to work. And now when we look at our event handler, we have commented out everything except for the two functions that we need. The interlock function and the send level command, which of course is going to make the level as well. So that's great. That means we're now ready to write the faders event handler. So let's come down here, line 45 for me. We're going to write controls dot fader level dot event handler, and it indeed is a function. We're going to pass in the CTL just like always, and then here it is. We are going to simply call func send level, and what are we going to pass into it? We're going to pass in the fader's value. Now when I hit save and I grab the fader, you can see now the fader is perfectly working. And for me, it's one line of code. That is pretty gratifying. It's pretty gratifying that the event handler is simply one line of code because we've been so thoughtful to make functions that we can use in appropriate places at appropriate times. before we move on, they're actually, look at this particular situation, Nate.
Yeah.
We have what is called a discrepant feedback situation. This is going to get people's attention, don't you think? We have the preset for turn everything off
Yeah.
lit, and the fader is all the way at the 100.
Yeah, that doesn't seem appropriate.
And the lights are on. That's going to be kind of a bummer.
We're living in two different possible lighting states simultaneously.
Yeah, that's not great. The correct answer for solving this is getting real feedback. We are not quite ready to get real feedback for the moment. And please hear me, dear viewer. Only for the moment, we're going to make some fake feedback. In general, I don't like fake feedback. I don't think you should do fake feedback, but because I also can't really bring myself to look at this for the next 20 minutes, I'm going to put in a few things, at least temporarily, until we can come back to do some additional work here. So in our event handler for the preset buttons, a really easy way to get at least half of the problem solved is every time we recall a preset value, just update the fader to be that preset value. Here's how we do it. We are just going to say that controls.faderlevels.value is what? It's that preset level we were using, R levels I. Hit save, and now when you recall a preset, notice how the fader snaps to that position, and that's good. That feels a lot better, but it only solves half the problem, doesn't it? Look what we did here. We recalled fully on, and then we moved the fader, and now we have that discrepant situation again. There's a couple different ways to solve this particular discrepant situation, and the simplest way that we're going to do at the moment, again, we're going to come back and we're going to get real feedback, and we're going to make all of this work super duper good, but temporarily. And in fact, while we're here, line 42, make a note, turn on your caps lock, and then yell at yourself, fake feedback, replace me, exclamation point. Okay, totally temporary. Don't leave it, but leave it for now because it makes it look better. Similarly, down here, line 48, you can remember that we made a function called func_interlock, which took care of the lights. You can also break the interlock by using func_interlock and passing in a value that will break the interlock. Go back and think about the way the interlock function works. The interlock function works by doing a comparison of where are you in the loop and what number did you pass in. If where you are in the loop, I, matches the number you pass in, arg index, then turn on the light. So we, right, if you go back and you think about it, right, we had 4, right, I can run from 1 to 4, and typically we are sending in a value of 1 to 4, and we're going to make one of those lights light up. A really easy, nice way to break this, and it's going to be safe in this particular case, is actually pass in nil. If you pass in nil, then all of those comparisons will necessarily evaluate to false, which simply turns off all of the lights, which is exactly what we want. One thing, also, make the same note, fake feedback, replace this. With exclamation points. We are going to replace it. But here's a word about nil. They're dangerous. They're kind of hand grenades. And if you aren't ready for them, they will blow up your code. You're going to have to start thinking about nils and their implications. For us, this actually is a relatively safe use of the nil because of the way that we wrote func_interlock. Literally, because we are doing a comparison of a number with a different data type, it's going to necessarily resolve to false. We could have passed in 0, we could have passed in a string. lots of different ways to break the interlock. Basically, anything that's not the numbers 1 through 4, in our case, would have broken it. But I feel pretty good about passing in nil here, mostly because it gave me an opportunity to talk to you about beware of nils and plan for them.